It's August 20th, and today I want to give you an update on the Great American Fill project that's happening right here where I stand. The last time I started this project, the last time I gave an update, was way back on July 4th, almost 2 months ago now. There's still one pile of dirt left on the ground, and along the way, I picked up something else. A whole bunch of mulch. Here's an update video on the Fill project and how it's going. Stay tuned for that coming up. Believe it or not, I started this project around July 4th, and since then my life has been so busy in good ways, that I haven't had time to really come out here. In fact, I think I've only worked on this pile about 6 total times since I filmed that video. Nonetheless, over that 6 times, all the dirt piles except for this one right here are gone, and since then I've inherited the mulch pile, which you saw over there. More on that mulch later. This dirt pile here remains the last remaining dirt pile that I have to move out. After that, it's done for dirt on this fill pile for good. At least until we get to bed formation and topsoil, but in terms of generic fill, that's it. This pile here probably represents a 3 to 4 hour pile. So you may be thinking, man, you've moved all those piles just over 6 times, and yeah, one thing I've learned over moving a lot of dirt is piles are deceptive in terms of size. They look bigger than they actually are. They look like they're going to take more work to move than they actually do. A pile like this I can probably get done in 3 to 4 hours, no problem, but if you initially look at this, you may think, oh my God, that's gonna take forever to move, and I had 6 of these scattered around here. At this point, all those other ones are moved, 1 left, then I'm done. And I'm looking forward to actually being done with it. Right here's one of the fill piles that my neighbor dropped off, but the problem is the pile's here, and I actually need this pile about 30 feet uphill that way because the main fill pile is way up there. He dumped it here. Moral of the story here is when you do something, make sure you have clear and explicit instructions on what needs to be done. If somebody screws it up, don't blame them, blame yourself for not providing clear enough instructions. That's my fault. The instructions I gave him left some room for interpretation, and when you leave room for interpretation, you're probably not going to have the instructions interpreted the way you want them to be interpreted. So note to self, make better directions next time, and make sure it can't be screwed up. One danger of taking on free fill is you never know what you're going to get. And one thing I've gotten in this pile, with these piles more than I wanted, are big chunks of this. This isn't soil, this isn't clay, this is concrete, and this is what I don't want in the pile. I don't want to be growing stuff in a bunch of concrete. And the thing about this concrete is it's kind of few and far between. There's maybe 2% concrete, from big chunks like this down to itty bitty marble sized chunks. So what I've had to do is just try and pick it out as I've gone along and try and minimize as much concrete as I could. In the growing area, I'm not going to get it all, but what can I do? I'm not going to obsess over it and spend forever trying to pick it out. That's one of the dangers of getting fill. You don't know where it comes from, what's going to show up. And despite asking a lot of questions, they never seem to give you the actual true answer. Are there rocks in it? No, there will be. Is there a lot of clay in it? No, there will be. Is there concrete in it? No, there will be. Is there garbage in it? No, there will be. A lot of junk in it. In terms of junk, one other thing I had a lot of in here was palm roots. If you've never seen palm roots, this is what they look like. They're almost worse than regular tree roots because you get this matte sponge of these gnarled roots that form really densely on surface. Well, when they dug this pit where all my fill came from, there must have been a few palm trees in there because there's a ton of these roots from these dense balls that are actually hard to get a shovel through long stringy roots that are 4 feet long. The problem with this is it makes it a pain in the you-know-what to move it. It's just impossible to dig through because you can't cut through it with a shovel. You just can't scoop into the pile cleanly every time and move dirt quickly. You're having to rake through it, you're having to use a pick, you're having to cut through all this root mass. It is a pain in the butt. So there was one pile actually right where the camera's sitting and where I'm standing that had a lot of this palm in it. It's now officially moved and out of the way. The good thing is I get all the benefit of the organic matter from those roots when they break down. The bad thing is the one-time effect of dealing with that palm is a pain in the butt. One other danger that comes with taking free fill is you get a lot of this. If you can't see it, what this is actually a very fine mesh plastic netting. This is what they put down on the fields when they grow sod. So a lot of people out here, when they put in a new lawn, they don't direct seed, they roll out sod, and every roll of sod has this plastic netting that the grass is growing through. The problem with this is when you dig it up, when you rototill it up, you end up with all this crap in the soil. So part of the load I got had a bunch of this in it. So now it's like, damn, I got to deal with all this plastic. And fortunately, it was in one spot, so I was able to move as much as I could. And what I do with the junk I don't want, that kind of goes on the edge, outside edge of the pile to help build up the slope so the pile just doesn't want to fall over. So all the junk I don't want, I can use, but it's just one other worry here of having to deal with garbage that comes inside of the fill itself. Overall, sourcing out free fill has been a good way to build this pile. I wouldn't be standing where I am today, literally, if I couldn't source these resources for free. So despite getting the concrete, despite getting the palm, despite getting the plastic in it, it's a worthwhile venue for me to seek it out. It makes sense. Otherwise, I'd have to buy this and bring it in, and it's just too expensive. There's probably 50 dump truck loads in this pile, and to try and pay for that, you know, some people can do it, but that's not what I want to pay for. Where you end up dealing with a lot of this waste or the garbage is in the front end. For example, one pile up here had a lot of concrete in it, so much so I didn't even want to sort it. I ended up taking that pile and basically dumping it over this front edge to push the pile out a little further. When you're moving a whole pile via wheelbarrow load, it just goes a lot slower than shoveling it in place. You just got to take your time at the front end, pick through it, so you don't have to spend the time at the back end, which is what I don't want to do, is come back and pull this junk out later, although I'll probably be pulling some of it out later. Right after I made that initial video back on July 4th, I get a call from my neighbor. Hey, you want some wood chips? They're good wood chips. And I thought, sure, why not? I'll take them. And then he shows up with the truck, and it's a massive truck of them, and that's where this pile comes from. So now I'm thinking, well, one, where do I want to dump these? I considered dumping them in my driveway, which I'm glad I didn't, because then I'd have to move it even further to get it to where I want. But two, if I'm putting the mulch on the pile, how am I going to integrate the mulch into the system, or am I going to move it somewhere else on the property? Well, what I've decided, and this will make all the back to Edeners yell out a big hallelujah, is I'm going to kind of cover all of this in mulch. Not kinda, I am going to cover all of this in mulch. There's a few reasons why I want to do that. Number one, soil quality. The last batch of fill that I got in here, all this fill you see around here, this light colored stuff, is a lot of clay. More on this soil in a little bit. We'll take an in-depth look at it, but this is not high quality topsoil. There's a lot of clay in here, which is good for water retention, but it's going to be a mucky mess. So what I figured is, I don't really want to plant into this. I can't work with this. So why don't I just start building up? And then what I'll do is I'll use the mulch to just cover all of it. That'll start adding some organic matter into the top layer of clay. It'll provide a moisture barrier to help keep moisture in the soil. And when it rains, if I don't cover this up like I didn't have last winter, it turns into a soupy, sloggy mess. It's like walking through brownie batter out here. You take a step and you're 6 inches deep in clay, and you're lucky if you can take the next step without your boot coming off. So by putting all this mulch out here, it'll be a carpet that will at least make it accessible in the winter when we do get our rain, so you can walk out here. And also by using this mulch, I'm going to get all the benefits of the wood chips and the soil. Hallelujah. Paul Gastucci's theories are coming into play here in Southern California. A lot of people on this channel in the comments are like, just put wood chips on it. Well, here's a case where I will be putting wood chips on it, at least initially. So all this stuff will be spread out over this pile, and then I'll start to slowly build my beds up on top of the wood. One thing I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do, at least not for a long time, is invert this soil, because I don't want this clay that's down there to come up. So it's going to be lasagna gardening, if you will, on top of what's already a big lasagna already, and building up. So compost and probably some amended topsoil to lay out the beds here eventually. But for now, it's wood chips on top of it. If we were to take a cross section of this pile right now, here's what it would look like. On the very bottom, we'd have big round logs. Then when we get further up, there'd be a lot more brush, palm fronds, small clippings, things like that. Even some layers of mulch, just like you see here. Then last year, about the same time, I had 2 big loads of fill come in, and I probably have 15 to 18 inches of fill, which is a better topsoil than what I have right here, but there's still a lot of clay in it. Then, earlier in the spring, I came back in, put a lot of brush on top, palm fronds. That was then covered in wood chips. The last bit of fill, which you see right here, went on top of that, and then on top of that will go this mulch, which you see here. So there is some massive lasagna action going. Eventually, when this all breaks down, I think it's gonna make a really great soil. How long is it gonna take to break down? I don't know, probably a long time. And what are the effects of that all gonna be? We'll have to see going forward. One of the reasons I don't like using the Paul Gastucci back to eating gardening method out here is because of the quality of the wood chips we get, and also the climate that we have. So I'm not saying that method doesn't work, I'm not saying it's not good, but for me, in my situation, it's not the best situation. Here I'm gonna make it work because it's really the only choice I have, or it's the best choice I have. I wanna show you one of the reasons why I don't do it, and that's the quality of the wood chips. When you get a load of wood chips delivered out here, this is what you're getting. So this is not your Paul Gastucci style wood chips. This is not shredded up maple trees and elm trees and alder trees and oak trees. This is what shredded palm looks like. It's extremely fibrous. And this stuff, for whatever reason, it just doesn't break down very well. Doesn't matter if you wet it, doesn't matter if you compost it. Palm does not like to break down. Don't believe me, research it. So if you get a whole bunch of this stuff, it tends to hang around for a while. The other thing you get when you get mulch dropped off by the tree trimmers out here is this. And this is a queen palm frond, the central stem of the frond itself. Not only are they nasty with these little hook-like thorns on them, which are terrible, but you get these big ass chunks in here. Now, I can't chip this. I can't regrind this. Some people have suggested just regrinding the clips. Given the fibrous nature of this, which you can see right here, you can't run this through like a small home scale level chipper. It'll just bind it up, it'll seize it, and you're gonna create a mess. This has to go through like an industrial big chipper. So in my situation, I have to work with these, which either means putting these in like this and hoping they break down in time, or removing them from the pile, which is a pain because as you can see, I mean, there's a lot of these in here. So this is one reason I don't do that style, because those nice, crumbly, fall through your hand style wood chips that you see in the Back to Eden video, I can't get them out here. They don't exist, at least not for free. You have to buy them, and you're talking then, if you're buying them, $30, $40, $50 a yard for wood chips, and I don't think that cost trade-off's worth it, and plus it's not really what I want to do in the long term. So I'm going to make the best of a kind of bad situation, and I'm going to take all this fibrous mulch that I have here that's going to cover up the clay, and then I'm going to lay my beds out on top of it. So on one hand, I'll get a nice surface to walk on, I'll get the organic matter on the bottom, and then I'll try and compensate for all this fiber and these big chunks by building new beds on top of that, leaving the pathways in the perimeter all mulched out nicely with this mulch. So what I'm growing in will be in a nice clean surface area. The subsoil where the roots will get down to, all the mulch will be there. So in theory, I'm still getting a benefit of the mulch, the mycelium that might break down that mulch, all that. But the top layer of soil, that will be clean, and I'm not gonna put this stuff on top of the clean stuff that I bring in, because this is free, and the stuff that I'm gonna bring in isn't going to be cheap, at least in a relative comparison. So I wanna keep that relatively free of big chunks so I can run a seeder and a transplanter, things like that through it. This is where I'm at right now. Now let's take a look at this soil and why I want to deal with it in a better way, because how it is right now is not great. So what we have right here, this light soil in the background, all the light area you see, that's the fill that I got for free. This is soil we dug up from a different part of the property where we needed to remove soil to put something else in. So this soil is moved here. Everything else you see that's light is the fill. So you can see how much darker this soil is. This is a good soil. This isn't an amended topsoil that's amended with compost that I got 2 years ago when we went to a more drought-tolerant landscape. I had to bring in a bunch of soil to put in some fill, and I wanted good stuff to grow plants in. Well, that's what this is. So you can see how much darker and richer this soil looks versus this soil back here, which has a lot of clay in it. When I originally put out that first video, somebody said, oh yeah, look at that, that's the typical San Diego soil. I have that same soil where I live in San Diego. It's a marine-based soil. And I think there used to be an inland sea, inland water here that eventually drained out, and what we're left with are the byproduct of that in our soil. And what you end up getting in some of these fill piles are chunks like this. Now this is not rock. It is pretty darn hard. Like, I can't break this apart with my hand, but this is almost like but somewhere between rock and soil. And one thing that's kind of cool in it that you can see, you probably can't pick it up on the video, is right here. And if you were to break this open more, there's all sorts of fossilized marine life. It looks like snail shells or shells that you would find at a beach. So this little chunk is full of those. On one hand, I'm thinking, wow, that's really cool because I'm going to get all of the benefits from the minerals in this when it eventually breaks down more, and it's nice to have that in the soil. But on the other hand, you deal with these hard clay soils with this former marine life in them, and they look like rocks. You just can't break them apart. So a lot of the fill is like this. It's these size chunks and smaller that are in this pile, and the fines at least came out of this. So if there's extra minerals in here, think of like a rock dust, I'm getting the benefit of those. But this is one of the things I'm working with out here, a marine-based soil that has slowly dried out over time and is now being excavated when somebody's putting in something on their property. Very different than the dark, dark soils, which we just saw earlier. I mean, if we compare these two chunks, this is a lighter chunk. This is a chunk that came out of the area that had the amended topsoil, and this right here is the fill itself. So a lot different in color, a lot different in texture. Crumbly. No chance in crumbling this. Maybe if I was Mr. T, I could crumble it, but no, not gonna happen with my hands. There it is, an update on the fill pile going from day 0 to where we are today on August 20th. I started on July 4th with that initial video, and now here's where I'm at today with it all. I've only worked on this pile, as I said, about 6 times since then. I probably need to put in 5 more days to finally finish this off. Once this is all done, once this final dirt pile is spread, once this mulch is spread, it's done for now. I'm sick of kind of working on projects. I have other stuff I need to do. And this one, while it's been fun, while it's been inspiring, I've been working on this thing for a year and a half now, and I'm ready to finally finish this and start growing on it. And I'm getting close there. That's what I'm going to start doing this fall. So I'll show you what this all looks like when it's done, but here's how it looks today before the final spread. Once it's spread, I'll circle back. And I want to say in closing, why did I do this? Why am I doing this all by hand? It's to inspire people to go out there and do epic you-know-what, to challenge yourself, to push yourself, to take on projects you think are impossible, to take on projects that take a long time to complete. Go for it. Do it. It's probably going to be less work than you think. It's probably going to take less time than you think, and you are more capable than you think you actually are. So go for it. Push the limits. Thank you for the support. Thanks for watching, and until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.